1 year on Vorath 7. The compound had become a small town. 200 people called it home now. The forge ran constantly, producing goods for trade. The farm sprawled across 3 valleys. The waiting list of exiles requesting transfer had reached 800 names, but success attracted danger. His name was Dax, a Karathi warlord exiled for war crimes too horrible to speak about. He had been on Vorath 7 for 3 years, longer than anyone else. He had survived by being more brutal than the planet itself. Dax commanded 300 warriors. All of them were dangerous. All of them had been sent to die but refused to. They had survived by raiding smaller settlements, taking what they needed by force. Now Dax looked at Jiho's town and saw resources. Food, tools, weapons, tamed predators. Everything he wanted all in one place. The warning came from a runner named Minsu. He had escaped from Dax's camp and run for 2 days straight to reach the compound. 300 warriors, Minsu said between gasps for air, coming from the south. They will be here in 3 days. Dax says he will take everything. Anyone who resists will be killed. The town held an emergency meeting in the common square. 200 civilians against 300 battle-hardened warriors. The odds were terrible. Some suggested running, abandoning the town and scattering into the wastes. At least some would survive that way. Sora stood up. We built this. Every wall, every field, every home. If we run, what do we have? Nothing. We will be scattered, weak, easy prey. Here together we have a chance, Haru agreed. We have advantages. We know this ground. We have the predators. We have Jiho. Everyone looked at Jiho. He had been quiet, thinking. We do not meet them in open battle, he finally said. We cannot win that way. But we do not need to win a battle. We just need to make victory too expensive for them to want. He laid out his plan. The next 3 days were preparation. They dug new channels for the geothermal steam, creating pressure points that could be released with levers. They collapsed parts of the valley walls, creating choke points in ambush positions. They set up fallback positions inside the compound, each one defendable. And they prepared the predators. Nari and her spine stalker pack would hold the south approach. Their job was to hit fast and retreat, drawing the enemy into the valley. Minho and the Razor Wings would attack from above, focusing on leadership and communication. The Void Stalker pack would wait in the shadows for night to fall. That was when they were most dangerous. Sanghoon the Vorath Render and 4 others who had joined the compound would form the heavy defense. Nothing broke through a render line. Daehyun and the magma crawlers would use the tunnels. They could pop up anywhere, attack, and disappear underground before the enemy could react. Everyone had a role. Even the non-fighters had jobs. Medical teams prepared treatment areas. Supply teams distributed weapons and armor. Communications teams practiced signal systems since they had no radios. On the morning of the 3rd day, scouts reported Dax's army approaching. They came at dawn when the temperature was starting to rise. 300 warriors in organized formations. They had salvaged armor and weapons. Some even had energy shields. This was a professional military force, not a gang. Dax stood at the front, tall and covered in scars. He raised his hand and the army stopped just outside the valley entrance. Humans, he shouted. His voice echoed off the rocks. I know you can hear me. Surrender now. Give us half your supplies, half your predators, and teach us your methods. Do this and we will let you live. Jiho stood on the compound wall. Next to him, Nari growled low. No, he shouted back. Leave now. You are not welcome here, Dax laughed. You cannot stop us. We have 300 warriors. You have farmers and engineers. This will be over in an hour. Last chance, Jiho called. Leave or face the consequences. Dax gave the signal. His army moved forward into the valley. It was the last time they would underestimate farmers. The first trap triggered when they were halfway through the valley. Geothermal steam exploded from channels in the ground. It was not hot enough to kill, but hot enough to cause chaos. Warriors screamed and scattered. That was when Nari struck. The spine stalkers hit the left flank like a hammer. They focused on the warriors with the best armor and weapons. The leaders. 4 warriors went down in the first attack. Then the stalkers retreated into the rocks before the enemy could organize a counter. From above, Minho and the Razor Wings dove. They did not try to kill. They just grabbed weapons and shields and flew off with them. A warrior without a weapon was just a target. The army pushed forward anyway. They were professionals. They adapted. But they were adapting to human tactics, not predator tactics. The magma crawlers came next. The ground opened up beneath marching warriors. Daehyun and his family pulled them underground, not killing them, just removing them from the battle. But to the other warriors, it looked like the ground was eating their friends. Fear started to spread. Dax pushed his army forward. They reached the compound walls. But the walls had been designed for this. Narrow approaches. High positions for defenders. And the render line, Sang-hoon and 4 other renders blocked the main gate. They did not charge. They just stood there, 6 legs planted, teeth bared. 5 apex predators working together as a unit. 20 warriors tried to break the line. None of them made it through. The battle lasted 4 hours. Dax's army had the numbers. But they were fighting in unfamiliar terrain against an enemy that used the environment as a weapon. And they were fighting predators that coordinated like a military unit. When night fell, the Void Stalkers emerged. That was when Dax's army broke. Night belonged to the Void Stalkers. They moved through shadows like ghosts. Warriors started disappearing. Not killed, just dragged away into the darkness. The survivors could hear screaming. They could not see where it came from. Panic set in. Warriors started running, not retreating in order, just running. Dax tried to stop them, but his own people would not listen. By dawn, Dax had lost half his force. Some were dead. Most were just gone, scattered into the wastes or captured by the predators. Dax himself stood alone at the valley entrance. His army had abandoned him. Jiho walked out to meet him. Behind him, every predator in the compound followed.
Spine stalkers.
Razor wings, renders, void stalkers, magma crawlers. An entire ecosystem of apex predators moving as one coordinated force. You can leave, Jiho said. Walk away and never come back. Or you can join us. Work with us. Those are your only choices. Dax looked at the predators, at the compound walls, at the 200 civilians who had just defeated his army. How? He asked. How did you do this? Because we understand something you do not. Fighting is expensive. Cooperation is efficient. Every creature on this planet can be a partner if you approach them correctly. Even humans. 50 of Dax's warriors came back to the compound that evening. They asked to join. They were tired of fighting, tired of just surviving. They wanted to build something. Dax himself disappeared into the wastes. Some said a pack of wild renders got him. Others said he was still out there somewhere, alone and broken. The compound buried its dead. 7 people had died in the battle. The town mourned them properly, but they had won. Not through superior force. Through superior strategy and cooperation between species that should have been enemies. Word spread across the planet and beyond. A warlord with 300 warriors had been defeated by farmers with tamed predators. The waiting list grew longer. Now it was not just exiles requesting transfer. Scientists wanted to study the methods. Trainers wanted to learn the techniques. Even some council officials quietly asked about visiting. Vorath 7 was no longer a death world. It was becoming something else entirely. Something new. A place where the rules were being rewritten. And Jiho, standing on the walls watching the sun rise over the valley, smiled. His grandfather would have been proud. 8 months after landing, the compound now housed 47 exiles. The walls had been expanded twice. The farm produced enough food that they actually had surplus to trade with other survivor groups scattered across the planet. And Jiho had tamed 6 more predators. There was Nari and her pack. 3 more spine stalkers had joined, drawn by Nari's presence. They hunted together and brought kills back to share. Minho the Razorwing was teaching 2 younger Razorwings to patrol from the air. Daehyun the magma crawler had been joined by his mate and her 3 offspring. But the most impressive were the Void Stalkers. Void Stalkers were nocturnal hunters, pure black with eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They hunted in packs of 6 to 12. Most exiles who encountered them died within minutes. They were silent fast and absolutely lethal. Jiho had studied them for 2 months before attempting contact. He learned their pack structure, their hunting calls, the way they marked territory with scent markers. Then he started leaving offerings, meat placed at the edge of their territory. Not every night, just sometimes. Unpredictable, but always there eventually. The Void Stalkers noticed. They watched the compound, watched Jiho. One night, the alpha female approached the walls. She did not attack. She simply sat and watched. Jiho sat on the other side of the wall and watched back. They did this for 9 nights. Just sitting. Just being present. On the 10th night, Jiho offered meat through a gap in the wall. The alpha, who he named Unji, took it. Ate it slowly while maintaining eye contact. That was how it started. Within 3 weeks, the entire pack of 6 had integrated with the compound. They hunted at night and returned at dawn. They slept in a den they dug beneath the south wall. They protected the compound like it was their own territory, because it was their territory now. The change did not go unnoticed. Galactic Council monitors in orbit around. Vorith 7 had been tracking life signs. They expected those signs to decrease every month. That was what happened on Class-9 worlds. People died. Numbers dropped. Eventually, no one was left. But on Vorith 7, the life signs were increasing, not just surviving but growing. The heat signatures showed organized structures. Agriculture, industry, it was impossible. So they sent someone to investigate. Investigator Choi Yuna arrived on a Wednesday morning. She was human, tall and professional in her council uniform. She had been assigned to verify what the monitors showed, probably to confirm that the sensors were broken. Her shuttle landed outside the compound walls. She stepped out expecting to find desperate survivors fighting over scraps. Instead, she found Jiho negotiating with a Vorith render. The render had a bad infection in its front leg. The wound was deep and filled with parasites. Without treatment, the leg would need to be removed, which meant death for a creature that needed all 6 legs to hunt. Jiho was offering a deal. Medical treatment in exchange for patrol duty on the eastern perimeter. The compound would provide steady food during recovery. The render would help defend against other predators. The render, which Jiho called Sang-hoon, considered this. Then it lowered its massive head in agreement. Yuna stood frozen, watching a human clean and treat a wound on one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. The render made sounds of pain but did not attack. Nearby, 3 spine stalkers watched calmly. A razorwing preened its feathers on the wall. "What," Yuna said slowly, "is happening here?" Jiho looked up from his work. "Oh, hello. You must be from the council. Give me a moment. This needs to be bandaged properly." He finished treating the wound, then gave Sang-hoon a large piece of meat. The render took it gently, careful not to accidentally bite Jiho's arm off, and limped toward the eastern ridge. Jiho washed his hands and turned to Yuna. "Welcome to Vorith 7. Would you like some tea? We just harvested a local herb that makes a decent drink." Yuna followed him into the compound in a daze. Inside the walls, she saw organized chaos. Exiles working the forge, others tending gardens. A group of children, mixed species, playing a game while a void stalker watched over them like a guardian. They sat in what Jiho called the common room. It was carved from stone but decorated with woven cloth and painted murals. Someone had talent for art. "The council sent me to investigate an anomaly," Yuna said, accepting a cup of hot tea. "The life signs readings showed organized settlement, agriculture. We thought the sensors were malfunctioning." "They are not malfunctioning," Jiho said. "That is impossible. This is a Class-9 lethal world. The survival rate is less than 1%. How are you not just alive but thriving?" Jiho sipped his tea. "Because the classification is wrong. Or rather, it is only looking at part of the equation. Yes, this planet has extreme conditions. Deadly predators. Toxic rain. Temperature swings that can kill. All true. Then how? Because humans are adaptable. We have been adapting to hostile environments for millions of years. Hot deserts. Frozen tundras. We even lived in space before we met other species. We are very good at making hostile places livable." Yuna shook her head. "But the predators. I just watched you treat a Vorith render like it was a pet. Not a pet. A partner. That is the key that the council missed. They put predators on a planet and expected those predators to kill us. They forgot that humans are predators too. We just learned something that most apex predators never learn." "What is that?" "Cooperation is more efficient than competition." Yuna looked out the window. She could see the farm in the distance. Organized rows of crops that should not exist. "You domesticated them." "No. Domestication takes generations. This is simpler. Think of it as mutual benefit. I studied each species, learned what they needed, offered resources they could not easily get alone, food, medical care, safe territory. In return, they help defend the compound and hunt for the group. Everyone benefits. That should not work, Una said, but it does. And it works because I approach them as intelligent creatures with needs, not as mindless killing machines. Every species wants three things: food, safety, and to avoid unnecessary risk. If cooperation provides those things better than solo hunting, most will choose cooperation. Una spent 3 days at the compound. She watched the operations, interviewed exiles, observed the predators. Her final report would shock the council, but before she left, she saw something that made everything clear. A new exile arrived, dropped by shuttle. He was Karathi, a warrior species, dangerous, violent. He saw the farm and the peaceful exiles and laughed. He threatened to take what he wanted by force. Nari stepped between him and Jiho. Behind her, 5 more spine stalkers appeared. Minho landed on the wall, screeching. The Void Stalker pack emerged from their den, eyes glowing. The Karathi warrior looked at all those predators working together to protect the compound. He dropped his weapon and asked if he could join instead. Una understood then. This was not just a settlement. It was a new way of thinking about survival, about cooperation, about what was possible when you stopped seeing everything as a threat and started seeing potential partners. She returned to her shuttle with a datapad full of notes. The council would want answers. They would want to know how a death world became a requested posting, because that was the other thing. Exiles across 3 sectors were now asking to be transferred to Vorath 7. They wanted to learn from Jiho. They wanted to be part of what was being built here. There was a waiting list for a Class-9 lethal world. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. 5 months on Vorath 7. The cave system had grown into something bigger, something that almost looked like a real settlement. Jiho stood at the entrance and looked at what they had built. Stone walls enclosed a courtyard where the forge burned day and night. Storage rooms held supplies and dried meat. Living chambers housed 23 exiles now. And outside, past the walls, rows of freshly turned soil waited for seeds. The farm was Jiho's biggest challenge yet. The soil on Vorath 7 was all wrong for growing. Too acidic, full of minerals that poisoned most plants. The rain could not be used directly because it burned anything living. And the temperature swings made it nearly impossible for seeds to survive. But Jiho had ideas. He collected ash from the volcanic vents to the west, mixed it with the soil. The ash neutralized the acid. Not perfectly, but enough. For water, they built a collection system. Rain fell into stone channels. The water flowed through layers of sand and native grasses that filtered out the harmful chemicals. It took 3 weeks to build, but it worked. The temperature problem was harder. Seeds needed steady warmth to grow. But Vorath 7 went from burning hot to freezing cold every 16 hours. Bora had the solution. He showed them how to build small greenhouses using crystal panels heated by geothermal steam. The panels trapped heat during the cold nights. During the hot days, they opened vents to let cool air in. It was complicated. It took constant attention. But when the first green shoots pushed up through the soil, everyone cheered. They grew protein-rich tubers that Bora called ground root. They grew hardy space wheat, engineered to survive almost anywhere. And in one special greenhouse that Jiho tended himself, tomatoes grew. Real earth tomatoes. It should have been impossible. Tomatoes needed specific conditions. The right temperature, the right soil, the right amount of water. Everything had to be perfect. But Jiho made it perfect. He adjusted the soil every day. He controlled the temperature by hand. He talked to the plants like his grandfather used to do. When the first tomato turned red, Sora cried. She said she had not seen an earth tomato in 7 years. They cut it into 23 pieces. Everyone got 1 bite. It tasted like home. More exiles arrived. Word spread across the valley and beyond. A human built a farm on a death world. He tamed a spine stalker. He offered shelter and food to anyone willing to work. Some came curious. Some came desperate. All of them stayed. Jiho never turned anyone away. But he made the rules clear. Everyone works. Everyone contributes. Fighting gets you expelled. Stealing gets you expelled. Hurting others gets you expelled. On a world like Vorath 7, being expelled from the compound meant death. So people followed the rules. The compound grew. New walls went up. The forge produced not just weapons, but farming tools, plows, hoes, irrigation pipes. Things needed for building, not just surviving. And Jiho kept watching the predators. He had noticed something. Nari had become gentler since joining them. She still hunted. She was still dangerous. But around the compound she was calm. She even let the younger exiles pet her scales. One day a razor wing landed near the compound. It had an injured wing, probably from a fight with another predator. It could not fly, could not hunt. It would starve. Jiho approached it slowly. The razor wing screeched and tried to snap at him with its beak. But it was weak, dying. He offered it meat, clean water, a safe place to rest. The razor wing, which he named Minho, accepted. It took 4 weeks for the wing to heal. During that time, Minho stayed near the compound. When his wing was strong enough to fly, he did not leave. He perched on the walls and watched for danger. When other predators approached, he dove at them, screaming warnings. Then came the magma crawler. It was a strange creature covered in thick armor plates. It lived underground normally, only coming up to hunt. But this one had been driven from its territory by something bigger. It dug a burrow near the compound walls. Jiho left it alone. The crawler was not aggressive unless threatened. But when a pack of smaller predators tried to attack the compound, the magma crawler emerged. It fought alongside Nari, defending the walls like it was defending its own territory. After that, Jiho started leaving food near its burrow. The crawler started staying closer. Eventually it let him approach. He named it Daehyun. The other exiles watched all this with amazement. Haru asked Jiho how he did it. How he turned deadly predators into allies. Jiho explained while working in the garden. Think about earth dogs, he said, pulling weeds. 10,000 years ago they were wolves, dangerous, wild, but humans did not conquer them. We cooperated with them. We shared food. We protected each other. Over time, wolves became dogs, but that took thousands of years, Haru said. For wolves, yes, but these predators are smarter. They learn faster, and they understand one simple thing. Working with us means easier food, safer territory, and medical care when injured. Why would they choose to be alone when cooperation is better? Sora joined them in the garden. She had been watching a group of younger exiles playing with Nari. The spine stalker was letting them climb on her back like she was a ride. The council would never believe this, Sora said. The council does not understand cooperation, Jiho replied. They think in terms of hierarchy. Someone dominates, someone submits, but that is not how nature really works. In nature, species cooperate all the time. Birds that clean crocodile teeth, fish that clean sharks, bees and flowers. Cooperation is everywhere. But these are apex predators, Haru pointed out. Jiho smiled. So are humans. We just cooperate better than any other apex predator ever has, and we are teaching them to do the same. That evening, the compound held its first real meal together. Not rations, not survival food. Real food from their farm. Roasted ground root. Fresh wheat bread. A salad made from native greens that Bora had discovered were edible. And for dessert, 1 tomato per person from Jiho's greenhouse. 23 people from 12 different species sat together. They shared food. They shared stories. And around the compound, 3 apex predators kept watch. Nari on the south wall. Minho perched on the forge roof. Daehyun at the entrance to his burrow, only his eyes visible in the darkness. Jiho looked at all of this and felt something he had not felt since before his exile. Pride. Not pride in himself, but pride in what they had built together. The Galactic Council had thrown them away, sent them to die on a world-rated Class-9 lethal, expected them to last days, maybe weeks, but they had done more than survive. They had built something, a community, a home, a future, and they were just getting started. 2 months passed like a strange dream. Jiho learned the rhythm of Vorath 7. Hot days, cold nights, windstorms every 6 days, rain that could burn skin if you stood in it too long, but he was still alive. The cave had become more than shelter. It had become a workshop. Using the fabricator and the materials he collected, Jiho built a forge near the geothermal vents. The heat from deep inside the planet was perfect for melting metal. He made tools first. A better hammer. Tongs for handling hot metal. A bellows to make the fire hotter. Then he made weapons. A knife with a blade that would not break. A spear with a tip sharp enough to pierce render hide. The strange crystals he found turned out to be incredibly useful. When heated and mixed with iron, they created a metal that was lighter and stronger than anything he had worked with before. Jiho did not know what to call it, so he just called it cave metal. He also learned about the predators. The Vorath renders hunted during the day. They marked territory by scratching deep gouges in rocks. They avoided the geothermal vents because the heat confused their sense of smell. The spine stalkers were different. They were smaller than renders, only as big as a horse, but much more dangerous. They had armor-plated skin and fangs that could punch through metal. They hunted alone, and they were smart. Jiho saw one watching his cave 3 weeks in. It stayed in the rocks just watching, studying him the way he studied it. He knew it would attack eventually, so he prepared. He channeled steam from the geothermal vents through carved channels in the rock. He built a series of gates using metal bars that could slam shut. He dug pits and covered them with weak stone, and he made a spear from render bone and cave metal. The attack came on a cold night. Jiho heard scratching at the cave entrance. The spine stalker was trying to dig its way in. He could see its eyes glowing in the darkness, green and bright. He waited until it squeezed through the narrow entrance. Then he triggered the first trap. Steam blasted from the walls. The stalker screamed and jumped back. That put it right where Jiho wanted it. He slammed the metal gate down. The stalker was trapped in a small chamber. Now came the dangerous part. The creature was wounded, but not badly. It was angry and scared, which made it more dangerous. Its fangs scraped against the metal bars. Each scratch left deep marks. Jiho did not try to kill it. Instead, he opened a small slot and pushed through a piece of meat. Render meat from a kill he had scavenged 2 days ago. The stalker sniffed at it. Then it ate every day for a week. Jiho fed the stalker. He never tried to touch it. He never made loud noises. He just provided food and water. And he talked to it, not expecting it to understand words, but letting it get used to his voice. On the 8th day, the stalker did not try to attack when Jiho opened the gate. It just watched him. Waiting, Jiho threw meat into the main cave chamber. The stalker followed it, ate it, then looked at Jiho. He named her Nari after his younger sister back on Earth. His sister had always been fierce and protective. This creature reminded him of her. It took another 3 weeks before Nari would let him touch her, and another week before she followed him outside the cave. But once that bond formed, it was strong. Nari became his partner. She patrolled around the cave. When other predators came near, she warned them off. Most left. The ones that did not leave, Nari fought. She won most of those fights. One morning, Jiho woke to find Nari had dragged a dead razor wing to the cave entrance. It was a gift. Jiho took the meat and thanked her. He used the wings to make better tools. Nothing wasted. Word spread among the exile population. There were still exiles alive, scattered across the valley. Maybe 30 or 40 left from the original 50 pods. Most kept to themselves. But news traveled. A human had survived a spine stalker attack. Not just survived. Made it an ally. The first visitor came on day 53. A Velthian named Haru. She was an engineer like Jiho, exiled for refusing to build weapons for the military. She was thin and scared and barely alive. Jiho gave her food, water, a place to sleep that was not the open ground. In return, she helped him expand the forge. She knew things about metal that he did not. Together they made better tools. Then came Bora, a Drexian trader who had been caught smuggling medicine to poor colonies. He knew about plants and seeds. He looked at Jiho's supply packs and said half of them would never grow here. But he knew which ones would. 3 people, then 5, then 8. All exiles who heard about the human who built a forge on a death world and made friends with an apex predator. Jiho made them all the same offer. Work together, share food, share safety. No one was the boss. Everyone contributed what they could. It was such a human idea that the aliens found it strange. In most galactic cultures, there was always a hierarchy, someone in charge, someone at the bottom. But desperation made them agree to try. They expanded the cave system, digging new chambers. They built a larger forge with multiple workstations. They started clearing ground outside for farming, though no one believed anything would grow in the acidic soil. Jiho believed it would. He just had to figure out how. At night, they sat around a fire and shared stories. Haru talked about her home world with purple skies. Bora described the trading stations near the galactic core. A human woman named Sora, who arrived in week 9, told them about the ocean on Earth, and Jiho talked about his grandfather's farm. About growing things from nothing. About patience and hard work. Nari slept near the fire, her breathing slow and steady. Sometimes the other exiles would look at her nervously, a spine stalker, one of the most dangerous predators on the planet, sleeping like a pet. But Jiho had learned something important. Most creatures did not want to fight. Fighting was dangerous. Fighting could get you killed. What most creatures wanted was food, safety, and to be left alone. If you could provide those things, they did not need to be your enemy. The nights were still cold. The days were still too hot. Predators still screamed in the distance. But inside the cave there was warmth. There was food. There was hope. And every day Jiho looked at the other predators in the valley, watching them, learning their patterns, planning his next move. If one spine stalker could become a partner, why not more? Why not different species? The Galactic Council called this a death world. Jiho was starting to think of it as home. The drop pod screamed through red clouds. Inside, Kang Jiho held tight to the safety straps as his stomach turned over and over. Through the small window, he watched other pods falling around him like metal rain. Some had flames trailing behind them. Others spun out of control. This was Vorath 7, a Class-9 lethal world. The place where the Galactic Council sent people to die. Jiho closed his eyes and thought about why he was here. 6 months ago, he had been a terraform engineer on Station Meridian. Good job, good pay. Then the corporations came. They wanted the colony planet cleared. All the human settlers needed to leave so mining could begin. Jiho said no. He refused to abandon 500 families, so the council called it treason and sent him here. The pod hit ground hard. Metal screamed. Jiho's head snapped forward, then back. Everything went dark for a moment. When he opened his eyes, red dust covered the window. The door hissed and opened with a bang. Hot air rushed in. It smelled like sulfur and something else. Something dead. Jiho unbuckled and stepped out. The ground was covered in sharp black rocks. Tall stone formations rose up like giant teeth all around him. This was the Razor Spine Valley. He had read about it in the exile briefing. Wind channels between the rocks could cut a person in half. All around the valley he saw other pods. Some were smoking. Some had never opened. He counted 12 pods that looked intact, out of 50 that had dropped with him. A scream cut through the air. Jiho turned and saw 3 Caltexi warriors running from the east. They were big aliens, blue skin and 4 arms, built like tanks. Behind them came something bigger. The creature stood taller than the pod, 6 legs, each thick as a tree trunk. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with teeth like swords. The skin looked like black armor plates. This was a Vorath render. Jiho had seen pictures in the database. Pictures did not do it justice. The render moved fast for something so big. It caught the first Caltexi in its jaws. The warrior did not even have time to scream. The other 2 kept running, but the render was faster. In 30 seconds, all 3 were gone. Jiho did not move. He watched the render from his position near the pod. The creature stopped and sniffed the air. Its head turned toward Jiho. They looked at each other across the valley. Do not run, Jiho thought. Running triggers chase instinct. Stay still. Look small. The render watched him for a long moment. Then it turned and dragged one of the Caltexi bodies away into the rocks. Jiho let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He had maybe 3 hours until dark. He needed shelter, water, a plan. Jiho went back to the pod and pulled out his supplies. A fabricator kit, small but functional, seeds and vacuum packs, basic tools including a hammer, knife, and plasma cutter, 30 days of ration bars, and a data pad with information about known Class-9 worlds. Not much to survive on. But it was something. He looked around the valley. Most exiles would try to find each other, group up for safety. That usually ended badly. Too many people meant too much noise. Too much noise attracted predators. Jiho had read the survival statistics. Groups of exiles rarely lasted a week. He needed to think different. He spent an hour searching the valley. He found what he was looking for on the north side. A cave entrance small enough that big predators could not enter easily. He crawled inside and found it opened up into a larger chamber. The walls were warm. He put his hand against the stone and felt heat coming from deep inside. Geothermal vents. Perfect. The cave went back further. He found a spot where water dripped from the ceiling into a natural pool. He tasted it, clean, not acidic like the rain outside. This would work. Jiho spent the rest of the daylight moving his supplies into the cave. He used the plasma cutter to smooth some of the rock near the entrance, making it easier to defend. He set up the fabricator near the geothermal vent where it would have power. As the red sun set, the temperature dropped fast. Within an hour, it went from burning hot to freezing cold. Jiho had read about this. Vorath 7 had extreme day-night temperature swings. The planet rotated fast, only 16 standard hours for a full day. He sat near the cave entrance and ate one ration bar slowly. Outside, he heard sounds, roars in the distance, something scraping against rock. The click-click-click of claws on stone. This planet was very much alive, and most of that life wanted to kill him. But Jiho did not feel afraid. He felt focused. His grandfather had been a farmer in Korea before the colony ships left Earth. His grandfather always said that the land does not care about your fear. It only cares about your work. If you work smart, you survive. If you work stupid, you die. Vorath 7 was just land. Dangerous land, yes, but still just land. Jiho pulled out his datapad and started reading everything about Vorath renders. Their hunting patterns. What they ate. Where they made their territory. How they communicated. Most people saw monsters. Jiho saw animals. Animals had patterns. Patterns could be learned. And things that could be learned could be used. He read for 3 hours. Then he slept in short periods, waking up every hour to listen. Nothing came near the cave. The entrance was too small and the geothermal heat probably confused the predator's sensing abilities. When morning came, the temperature shot up again. Jiho ate another ration bar and went outside. He needed to scout the area, find resources, map the territory. He saw footprints near his cave. 6-legged, big. A render had passed by during the night, but it had not tried to enter. Good Jiho spent the day exploring. He found iron deposits in the rocks. Copper, too. And something else, a strange crystal that grew near the geothermal vents. It was warm to the touch and very strong. He collected samples of everything and brought them back to the cave. That night, he heard another exile screaming somewhere to the south. The screaming stopped after a few minutes. Jiho said a quiet prayer for whoever it was. Then he went back to work. The Galactic Council had sent him here to die. They expected him to last maybe a week. 2 weeks if he was lucky. But Jiho had no intention of dying. He had work to do. And his grandfather had taught him well. The land does not care about your fear. It only cares about your work.